What's the silliest question you've ever been asked in a job interview? Story 1. If you were a Star Wars character, would you be Luke, Leia, Hans, R2, or C-3PO? I didn't get it probably because I said Wedge Antilles and went on for quite some time of the strength of being a competent background character that didn't feel the need to be a main character of every story. The interviewers had no idea who Wedge was. Story 2. If someone tried robbing us, how would you protect the cash register? They didn't like my reply. I wouldn't protect it. I thought this was some test, but it wasn't. They actually wanted their employees to put their life on the line for whatever money would be in the cash register at the time. This was a minimum paying job, BTW. Story 3. Not a specific question, but I'm a teacher and I live in New Zealand. We have a law here that if there is a teaching job available, a school has to advertise it and let people apply, even if they already have an employee they want to give it to. That includes if someone is working in a fixed-term role, usually covering while someone is on extended leave, and that role becomes permanent. They can't just give them the job to the person who has been doing it. I was fixed-term for the first 3 years of my current job. I've been permanent for the last 4. Each of the 3 years was a different contract. My school takes the application law very seriously. They made me reapply and interview for the job I was already doing 4 times. Each time they interviewed me and pretended not to know me, and I had to answer the questions like I was a brand new person. Story 4. If you needed to eat an elephant, how would you go about it? I guess this question could assess problem-solving skills or your approach to seemingly insurmountable tasks, but I could think of better questions for that. I ended up quoting that one Shel Silverstein poem about the girl who wanted to eat a whale and how she ate it one bite at a time. They seemed to like that answer. Story 5. The silliest question I ever got was whether I wanted to apply for the job. For context, I was in a beer distributor buying beer, wearing ripped jeans and a t-shirt. Owner mentions he has a job opening and asks if I want to apply. Needing a job at the time, I said sure. So he sits me right down for an interview only to tell me, "Sorry, I just don't like the way you're dressed." Bro, then don't ask me to apply. Story 6. It wasn't necessarily as it would reveal a lot about a person and how you can think on your feet, but went for an interview and guy rolls up in a wheelchair. He does a lot of the usual interview questions, then says we're going to do a bit of role play. Sell me an all-inclusive action-adventure holiday. My brain broke. Do I sell it to him as a person in a wheelchair? Do I lean into the accessibility of this fictitious holiday? Would that be offensive? Do I sell it as if he was a fully abled person? Surely that would be more offensive. Do I try and think of something less action-y? Obviously, this question fulfilled its intended purpose, and I didn't get the job. But he did say he really liked me, but was too shy and lacked confidence and to try again in 6 months. This was nearly 20 years ago. I was too embarrassed to apply again. Story 7. If you were a brick, what brick would you be? I've also been asked, if you were a tree, what tree would you be? I've been told it's a tactic just to see how you react, not a question needing a correct answer. Emo. That does nothing to show if a candidate will be able to perform a job well. It's just a stupid power trip thing for people who don't want to actually interview well. Story 8. What's the biggest incentive you've gotten from a workplace to get something done? I was told that if the department I was developing did well, I would get a promotion to a role supervising a larger part of the division. Well, we don't do any of that kind of work here. That was the moment where, in interview 3, I realized the small granite company I was interviewing for was not really worth my time anymore. It was genuinely the worst interview I've ever been a part of. Story 9 had this one in an interview for a job I didn't get, which I felt once I heard it, I wasn't getting the job. What would be a good reason not to hire you for this position? My reply was, a pre-approved or better candidate. In my mind, I had a ton of snarky replies, but opted for the neutral reply. Story 10, it started off as a statement, but then turned into a question. I know how the industry is turning towards remote work, but our company policy is to be 100% on-site with no exceptions. Even during the peak of COVID, we were 100% on-site every day. Is that something that you would be okay with? Aside from the May pay, and hearing from some other people the political games that went on, hard pass. Story 11. But on the floor, we're with a lot of girls and we talk about things like sex and stuff. Would you be okay with that? I was a 17-year-old girl, and the woman interviewing me clearly thought I was not a fit for her shoe store, trying to scare me away with something she thought I would be intimidated about. Like, clearly you don't have the balls when you cannot just tell me I don't fit in your team. Story 12. Ever thought about a side hustle as writer? Yeah, basically because I really like writing and my application was so well written. Mind you, creative position with a minimum of 100 applications. When I asked, why answer was, I can't really offer you the position because you lack experience, but we look for a texter at the moment. Freelance. Nope, freelance is not for me. Story 13. For a financial sales job, I was asked on a scale of 1 to 10, how competitive are you? I said, like a 6, maybe a 7, depends on what we're doing. The guy was founded, said he was looking for a 10, maybe a 9 for room to grow. This is a role where competitors thrive. Being decisive and confident is key. I said, yeah, I get that. Do you want to answer again? Sure, I'm definitely a 7. Story 14. I graduated with an electrical engineering degree and became an industrial electrician making $130K a year. I moved towns and applied for an engineering job, and the interviewer asked me, why didn't you get a real job when you graduated college? Story 15. This will get buried, but worked for a medical software company but tried to move to another company doing the same thing, supporting medical software. It was brutal. I got an interview, and they brought in a senior developer to ask me some questions. Software has crashed. What do you do? Me. Are there application logs? No. Me. Check the system event viewer logs. Me. Ask user to reboot system. Dev says no. Me. Do we have backend systems that will allow monitoring? Dev say no. Me. Are other users having issues? Dev says no. Me. Then I have to assume that the user profile is not okay. Maybe a rebuild is in order. Dev says no. Me. Escalate to tier 1 support. Dev laughed and says no. Me. So you're asking me questions about software I have never laid eyes on, has no logging, and does not report problems to the system. My aggressive attitude was mentioned when I got my rejection letter. Thank heavens I never worked for that company, and they got swallowed up by large health software companies within a year. Story 16. Coming out of the military and applying for a job. During the interview, they kept asking me what I would do in specific scenarios. My answer every time was that I assumed that they would have standard operating procedures that would cover this sort of thing, so I would just handle the issue how I was trained by them to do it. I got the job even though they had 0 SOPs. Story 17. While applying for an internal promotion at my last place of work, I was asked by HR if I didn't like my current job. Recently, I was applying for another job, go figure why, and they stopped my supposedly final interview because I couldn't be at their offices next Monday at 10 a.m. I explained that I was currently employed, and the HR person looked surprised and asked why I was applying for a job if I had a job with another company. Story 18. Paraphrased because this was like 10 plus years ago, but why do you do what you do? I couldn't answer for several reasons. First, it wasn't a particularly clear question, so I was thrown off trying to figure out what they were actually trying to ask. Second, it's not something that I have ever thought about or ever would think about. The honest answer is that my field pays well, and money can be exchanged for goods and services. The company was pretty culty though, so I'm sure that's not what they wanted to hear. Story 19. I wasn't the one being interviewed, but rather one of the interviewers. The person would have been on my team if hired, so I had half a vote. This was for a position at a software design company. He asked, do you think I could start a pole dancing group in the mornings? I had no idea what to say to that. Also had one where an interviewee said, I am an Aquarius, so I love water. Showering is my hobby. Do you love showering too? I mean, yay hygiene, but what a creepy thing to ask, especially your potential future supervisor. Story 20. I had a fairly successful interview, and at the end, the interviewer asked what book I was reading currently. I mentioned in the interview that I like to read. I told them, I literally started a new book that day and forgot the plot because it was a book I had on hold at the library for months. I mentioned that I had read the one she was reading a few years prior. She asked what I thought of it because she heard it makes people cry. I told her that I didn't cry, but I could see why others would. I was denied the job. The reason? I didn't place enough concern in my choices, forgetting what book I had literally picked up on the way to the interview, and that I seemed cold. I literally have a background in nonprofits/charities. It takes a lot more than a sad book to make me cry when I've spoken with people in person, on the phone, living things worse than what's in most books. Story 21. If you could be any animal, what would it be? Immediately no. I said human because we have opposable thumbs and don't have any natural predators. He laughed and asked why I was worried about predators. Like, buddy, you just asked me the question on the planet. Why on earth wouldn't you actually think about the question before asking me? I ended the interview early. I'm not playing these games about some underlying meaning behind what animal I choose. Story 22. When I applied for a minimum wage call center job for a charity, the questions themselves weren't that stupid, but the coaching we had from the agency beforehand was ridiculous. Now remember what we said earlier. When I ask if you'd ever wear fur, you must say no, never. It doesn't matter if you're scared of dogs, you have to say you love them. What do you mean you don't have any pets? Quick, make one up. Every single question had a pre-scripted answer. They might as well have not bothered interviewing and just had everyone read from the script. Unsurprisingly, 90% of the team was terrible at their jobs. Story 23. During a technical interview, the interviewer did a card trick and then asked me to guess how they did it. Then they asked me to calculate the center point of a 1000 x 1000 grid. Most people will say 500,500, but in an even-sized grid, there is not one single center point, but there is a center square. This was the one and only time I left an interview early because I told them we wouldn't be a good match. Story 24. I had been tasked with coding a solution to a 3-day stacking problem and was asked in the interview to explain my strategy. Step 1, I would find a naive solution, and optionally from there, if time and resources would allow, I would depth-first search for any better solutions a la Dijkstra's. The very next question, obviously from a script, was how would I modify the algorithm to increase performance so that it no longer found the best solution, but just any solution. I answered to stop at step 1 and not do the optional parts. Story 25. Not a question per se, but when I interviewed for my current job, small office, minimal customer interaction, they asked how good I am at dealing with dissatisfied people. The job I was coming from was business technical support for Sprint Wireless. The people you call when there's a service issue, except for business customers who depend on working cell service to make money, for Sprint Wireless. And I had one of the top customer satisfaction scores in the call center. I actually laughed for a few seconds before answering. Story 26. I already posted, but I thought of another. I was asked to sign my name on a blank piece of paper to show it was legible, then asked to write any sentence I chose. She was testing to see if I defaulted to cursive or print. I was denied the job because I printed. It was a 2-partner office, and the other partner argued with her in front of me that print is more efficient for most people these days, and as long as I could read cursive, the one partner wrote only in cursive, it didn't matter how I wrote. Glad I didn't get that one, but one of the stupidest things I've been asked for and denied a job over. Story 27. I got asked if I'm adopted during a job interview. For context, I'm mixed. My mother is half Japanese, half French, and my father is Iraqi, but I commonly get mistaken for Italian. I applied for a part-time job about 2 years ago when I was 16, and there was a section in the application where you had to fill out your ethnicity background details. The interviewer glanced over it for a brief moment and straight up asked me if I was adopted. I told her that no, I wasn't. But then she asked me if I thought I was being funny by lying about my background. Safe to say, I got up and left that very moment. Story 28. I'm in process of interviewing and have had a few. I was moving on to the project stage of an interview, and they said, make sure not to be too conceptual to make it real, but also said I could use screenshots of past work I've done. I was like, well, I don't usually take screenshots of my activity, and I definitely don't pull data off of my work computer and put it on my personal. This was for a tech sales job. Also, how would someone that hates you describe you? Like, probably in a way that doesn't reflect anything about myself. Like someone that hates me, it says more about how we differ from each other than my personality or working style. Another asked me where I see myself. I said I plan to transition to sales enablement eventually, which is true, but not for several years. And then he was asking me specifically when. I said I'd like to hit my 7-figure deal goal first. Then he said, okay, well, after that, if you're doing 7-figure deals, do you want to switch? Like, dude, what do you want from me? No, I don't have a set day in mind some 7 years in the future. Why are you even asking me this now? Story 29. Maybe not because it might be a common question, but I was interviewing for a pretty high-profile director job. After being headhunted and interviewing in front of panel after panel, one guy asked me, what 3 words would your friends use to describe you? I just thought, seriously? This isn't Burger King. Story 30. It was a big industrial shop with lots of cranes and beams and welding everywhere. They started asking me to convert off the top of my head metric to inch measurements and then doing arithmetic for said numbers. I told them, no, I don't do that frankly. They asked, why not, and got really flustered. The wrong answer is, sir, I just use a conversion chart and a calculator because it isn't the Stone Age. You want it accurate? You keep using your way. What a waste of time. Those old heads always obsessed with standing there doing head math to smarter people when you can memorize some common numbers and just instantly punch in the rest. Story 31. I was asked if everyone at the company was drinking a beer for a social hour during business hours and you were offered a drink, would you take it? I said I guess I would if everyone else was drinking. I was later told this was the reason I was not hired. Well, if everyone else at the company was drinking, why can't I? That is discrimination, is it not? Story 32. The person interviewed asked, so I can work Montfrey 6/18, right? When the position had been advertised as irregular shifts around the clock. The shifts were so bad that the interview itself had a whole section about if you've worked shifts before and well, do you feel like you could recuperate from like going home at 4 a.m. one day, having the rest of that day off, and starting at 1 p.m. the next day? It was literally one of the main reasons it paid better than average. They saw all that, answered the questions, and then still thought they'd ask if they could work what was essentially office hours. They kindly informed us The job wasn't for them when we told them it was impossible, at least for the first year, until a position opened up in a fixed schedule. And even then, those hours were the most difficult to get, wasted everyone's time. Story 33. If you could be any animal, what would you be and why? What the? I know it's some psychological mumbo-jumbo they pulled out of a personality test, but I can guarantee that the people interviewing you do not have the qualifications to interpret your answer in any meaningful way. It's a waste of everyone's time. BTW. The correct answer to this question is to consider the job you're applying for and find an animal that most closely aligns with the qualities you would need for that role. Example, dolphins are excellent communicators and work well as a team. Just conveniently ignore all the rape they get up to. Giraffes are very observant, can see a lot further than other animals, and are incredibly gentle in non-threatening situations. Anticipate being asked this question and have it pre-prepared. It's a as question. But if you can sound like you know what you're talking about, you'll be one step ahead of the middle management plebs interviewing you. Story 34. Interviewing for a delivery driver job, and the manager asked if we could do the interview outside in the pouring rain because he was supposed to go on a hike the previous weekend and missed it. This was in D.C. and he just moved from Northern California. I told him I was no longer interested in the position, and he better not ask people around here anything like that again. Story 35. If you were a car, what kind of car would you be? This was for a part-time gig cleaning offices after hours while I was in college. The dude who owned the business was majorly weird. He also gasped when he saw my hands and asked if I could palm a basketball. I'm female, and he made me feel like a freak. For the record, I cannot palm a basketball, but I did work for him for 2 years. It was a great job. Worked by myself and was paid by the job, not by the hour. I could speed clean and be done in half the time he estimated it would take me. Story 36. I was interviewing for a recruiter position that worked mostly in the accounting, business, and tech-adjacent sectors. I had to take this test on a computer that had a list of questions, and some of them were personality, scale of 1-5 type questions. And one of the questions randomly was, how do you feel about motivational sayings and phrases? I thought it was an absolutely bizarre question, and then I sat back from the computer, looked around the office I was in, and the walls were covered in these stupid photos of like an eagle perched on a branch over a lake, and then it said perseverance in some stupid pithy phrase. Story 37. I went for an interview at a well-known international company where, after a few cursory questions, the woman interviewing me spent over a half hour asking me about the town I lived in because she was considering moving there. I kept trying to steer the interview back to the job, but she kept going back to my town. It was really weird. So, not wanting to waste any more of my time, I kind of shut things down after a half hour of talking about the rinky-dink suburb where I lived and just wrote off the interview. Whatever. No harm, no foul. I did know a couple of folks who had worked at this company at that location in the past, so I figured I'd reach out to them to see what this lady's deal was. One of them didn't know her, but the other was like, do not take the job, she is crazy. I'd kind of figured that, but it was good to get confirmation. Well, wouldn't you know it? She called and offered me the job the next day. The job itself and the salary were decent, but something just seemed really off about this woman, and I got a bad vibe. Well, about 2 seconds later, I was proven correct. When I politely declined the job, she started screaming at me, like literally had to hold the phone away from my ear, that I wasted her time and now she was going to have to start her search all over again. Yeah, bullet definitely dodged. Story 38. What church do you go to? This was not in any way a church-related organization, department, or position. I was meeting with the entire department, and the department head blurted that out. 15 people fell absolutely silent, while he obliviously blathered something about, well, I don't care what church, but I do want to know you have some sort of spiritual life and a moral compass. I didn't confront it directly, but I mostly deflected with something about growing up in a generic denomination, and moved on. Nothing but crickets after the interview, but 8 months later, I got a call that they would like to arrange a second interview. Sorry, oddly enough, I happened to need food and shelter and thus found a different job. Story 39. Here's one from our interview packet. Give an example of a customer or caller that you turned around from a position of unhappiness to sheer joy. I hate asking our interviewees this. I'm always asking my manager and other supervisors if we really have to word it this way. Something about the sheer joy is just really off-putting to me. I don't know. Story 40. Not so much a question, but I was interviewing to be a page shelver at a library. I was asked to put the books on the cart in order, which is pretty standard. The hiring manager left me alone in the room. I finished sorting the cart and then sat and waited for 10 minutes before seeking her out. She thought I did it amazingly fast. I got the job. Other libraries I have worked at time you with a stopwatch before offering a real interview. It was pretty surreal. Also one of the best jobs I've ever had. Story 41. The 23-year-old, very pretty HR girl. Can you explain to me how being able to build a house from start to finish demonstrates problem-solving skills? Me thinking, does she think houses arrive neatly folded into a box with instructions? I glance at the 50-year-old geologist that is hiring me to provide field logistics that I have 10 years experience in. He gives me a knowing look in return. Story 42. Not a question. A series of what I can best describe as silly brain teasers. They said it was to see how good I am at problem solving. I got most of them wrong and figured I'd bombed the interview, but they admitted after I was hired they did it mostly to mess with people and see how they react to it. I should have known it would have been a Thai company to work for then, but I found out a few weeks later. Story 43. Jesus, some of you seem way too uptight. Yes, the questions lowballing salary are horrible, but some of the other questions might just be someone's way of getting a conversation started between two people who don't otherwise have anything in common. I've done a lot of interviews, and one of the most important things is how I can communicate with this person. Just picking a random or even silly topic to kick off a conversation can be a great insight. Some of you would be doing me a favor by just storming off or ending the interview right then. Story 44. I have a uniquely spelled name. They stopped me in the middle of answering a question and asked if I spelled my name correctly on my resume. When I said yes and made a joke about it being unique, they asked if I was sure I didn't get the job. Story 45. I remember having a performance review with one manager. She said she would have liked to have given me top marks in several areas, but if she did, that would mean that it would become the new standard, and I would have to do even more to get the top mark next time. She didn't like it any more than I did, and didn't want to effectively punish me with more work because I was already a good worker. She had several employees that exceeded, and if she gave them all high marks, that high mark would become the new standard, and the median would be harder to achieve by those who were struggling. Those already in the middle would end up in the bottom half at the next review and might possibly lose their jobs because they wouldn't be able to keep up. I get it, but it sucks that the system was set up like that. Story 46. Do you know what it means to be a dishwasher? I was applying for a dishwasher position at a restaurant when I was younger. This was the first actual job-related question. I said something like, to get dishes washed properly and quickly, which I was then given a frown, and she wrote something down. I asked if that was incorrect, but she moved on to other questions. I still don't know if there was an actual answer or what, but even over 10 years later, my family and I still make jokes about it, needing to go and become a dishwasher monk to understand the true meaning. Story 47. I was interviewing for a job with the DNR doing trail building. In my interview with 3 simultaneous interviewers, one guy said, "Have you ever built a fence?" I said, "No. I know how to build a fence, but I've never had the need to build one." So bro says, "So you can't build a fence?" I says, "Of course I can build a fence. I'm just saying that I've never had the need to build a fence. I've repaired fences, I've removed fences, I've poured footings for a fence. I've just never built a fence." Dude says, "So you can't build a fence." So I says to my fellow, "I've built boats. I've fabricated equipment on the farm. I've framed houses. I've chinked a log cabin. I've done roofing, siding, drywall, flooring. I've done lots of construction. I just haven't ever had the need to build a new fence." Homie responds with, "So you can't build a fence." At this point, I stand up and I say, "Tell me what kind of a fence you want built. Give me the lumber, throw the tools on the ground outside the office, and I'll build you a fence." I'm just being honest and saying that I've never had to build a fence from scratch. Anyone can build a fence. Do you want barbed wire, rustic, hand-hewn from the trees that are within reach? What do you want? One of the other interviewers told fence guy to let it drop. I did not get the job. Story 48. Interviewing for a custodian position while I was in college. And 4 questions in, they asked what I had for dinner last night. I stumbled and then made up an answer. The 2 in charge were horrible bosses, and I bet they thought they were so clever with that question. Sticks with me to this day for some reason. Story 49. Went to a Sears interview back in the day. Had one inattentive interviewer who came in left for most of the interview and returned towards the end to proceed to ask me this hard-hitting question. "I see this long list of jobs here. You seem to bounce a lot of places. How can we be sure you'll stay with us?" I simply responded, "Ma'am, that long list you're referring to are my volunteer projects, which you'll notice I do several simultaneous projects because I enjoy doing things that benefit the communities I'm a part of." That question decided I was not going to accept any offer from them. Story 50. About a decade ago, I had an interview at a local coffee shop, and the owner asked, "Which lane do you use when you're driving on the freeway?" I answered honestly with, "Well, it depends how long I'm planning to be on the freeway. If I'm only going one exit, then I'll probably stay in the right lane, but my exit is 20 miles away. I'll probably move over into the left. I still have no idea what she was trying to gauge with that question, but I guess I gave the wrong answer because I never heard back, lol. Next theme. As an adult, do you like taking baths? Why or why not? Story 1. I actually just got into them this winter. It's been life-changing. Turns out the only reason I didn't like taking them before was because there's actually a huge difference between just sitting in a tub of hot water versus taking a proper adult bath. The ideal bath requires a bit of planning and effort. Don't expect your first one to be perfect. Don't take a bath if you are dirty. Cleaning yourself in the tub sucks. Take a bath on a day when you've already fully cleaned your body in the shower. Your only goal in the tub should be to sit and soak. First rule of baths is, make it too hot. Hot enough so that it stings just a little bit when you first get in. This will allow the water to stay hot for a full approximately 30 minutes. Otherwise, you have to sit up and add more hot water, which breaks your relaxation and ruins the vibe. Create a multi-sensory experience. Use a scented candle and a scented bubble bath. I got both with lavender scent so they blend together. Turn off the lights. Play some soft, relaxing music. Have a glass of ice-cold water, and a beer ideally, available to cool you down as needed. Invest in the post-bath process. Get yourself at least one fluffy spa towel, a soft plush bath mat, and even a bathrobe if you're really feeling saucy. Story 238, yo male, and I'm in a hot bath right this very second. As for why, I've always loved baths. They're extremely relaxing and comforting. I can just rest and relax while scrolling Reddit or reading a book. It's a nice quiet time. Sometimes I'll even bring a glass of wine or a cocktail or a beer with me. Nothing compares to a cold drink in a hot bath. Terrible for actually getting clean though, so I typically shower afterwards. Also on very cold days, or when my body is sore from work and exercise, or when I'm sick, hungover, or when I'm especially lonely, depressed. Most of those speak for themselves, but I read one time that people in the throes of depression, or deep loneliness, or both, will enjoy a hot bath because it feels like the warm embrace that they're missing. I can't think of any better reason why I like it when I'm feeling that way, so I guess that must be it. When I'm feeling particularly adventurous, I'll even add bubbles. Yes, I'm really a 38-yo male. Story 3. If I'm going to take a bath, I'm making a production. I'm buying a bath bomb, I'm doing a face mask. I'm getting a movie up to help stop me from doing 15 minutes and getting out. But I only do them when my body feels really tired. Tired bones, skin feels weird, and my brain needs a break. It's like a total sensory reset for me, and it's definitely needed sometimes. Story 4. A couple of years ago, the toilet in the master bath cracked and leaked. For some unfathomable reason, the bathroom had carpet. We didn't know until the roof on the first floor became squishy, so we remodeled. My one very specific demand was an extra long, deep bathtub. I am tall, and bathtubs are regularly cramped for me. Every single who worked on the bathroom and saw the bathtub just sitting off to the side, waiting, commented on how nice it seemed. They were all right, it's fantastic, and I now do enjoy baths as a relaxation. Get some whiskey, maybe some good food, put on a movie and relax. Wife does similar. Story 5. Overall, no, but I just took my first bath in 15 years because my back was tight. It helped my back. However, in general, I'm a tall guy in a tub built for smaller people, and most of me doesn't fit even when I'm scrunched down. So less than 50% of me is actually bathing. The other half is just mostly chilly. Story 6. If I want a bath to relax, I have to clean the tub first, then take a shower to make sure I'm fully clean, then fill the bath to soak in to relax. So I almost never take a bath. I honestly don't think taking a bath in a tub that hasn't been cleaned while soaking in the same water you start with is any way to get clean at all. Story 7. I lucked out when I bought a house and they had a bath already installed. I'd never been able to fit into a tub before with any degree of comfort. This one I did. Not full lay down, but enough to be comfortable. I don't do it very often, but when I am stressed, my body hurts. Bubble bath with Epsom salts does wonders. Little death metal, some wine, whiskey or cider, feels amazing, especially at the end of a long week. A big factor is getting your mind to turn off. Story 8. The last time I tried must have been more than 10 years ago. I filled up the tub and got in, and was immediately uncomfortable. I barely fit in the tub, most of my body was out of the water. But honestly, the worst part was the silence. No noise but the sloshing and dripping sounds. I lasted less than a minute and drained the tub so I could take a shower. Story 9. So I clean myself semi-regularly. During the summer, I clean myself with only water, be it a lake, river, reservoir, creek, hot spring runoff, you name it. I also do that laundry in said water so as not to pollute drinking water, too much wish soaps and things. During the winter, I've been taking showers and haven't thought about a bath other than in a natural hot spring in ages. I think I will take one tonight and report back. Story 10. If I finally get the time to get in one that I can fit in, I'm tall, then yes. But it seems like a hassle, takes too long, and I don't have time for it as an adult LOL. Not hating on it, but I'm always like, there's that needs to get done. Just take your 2-minute shower and get on with it. Story 11. Personally, I like the concept of baths more than the reality. Sometimes I get grossed out by the thought of sitting in my own filth LOL. And it's extra work to run a bath and get all your bath bombs and other stuff together. That being said, it can be relaxing and I do enjoy them from time to time. Story 12. I used to really like baths when I was little, young basically. However, gradually became a dislike from 13-ish onwards. The main problem is I'm certainly not petite. I'm 6 feet, XL tops, rugby player build, so like an elephant trying to bathe in a goldfish bowl. Feel claustrophobic and just not relaxing. It also strikes me as illogical as you're basically soaking in your own dirt. Showers are far quicker, more refreshing, hygienic, practical, and generally enjoyable. The exception to this would be a big hot tub kind of bath, but not had the opportunity for years. Story 13. I want to like taking baths, but most North American tubs are too short and too shallow to cover me in water. The water doesn't stay hot long enough, and I don't come out feeling clean. I've been doing hot shower just before bedtime since high school, and that's a far better experience. Story 14. Yes, but rarely by myself and never if I haven't taken a shower immediately beforehand. As to the why, it feels great and is relaxing. I wouldn't be surprised if there are health benefits similar to a sauna, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there are no benefits at all. Story 15. No, I'm tall and don't fit well in the average bathtub, the only kind I've known aside from vacations, and the water just does not stay hot enough for me for long enough to really enjoy. The odd time I do take a bath, I have to drain a bit periodically and refill with more scalding hot water until I'm cozy again. I prefer the shower because I stay hot until I'm done. Story 16. I didn't until I was pregnant with my first child and dealing with a lot of round ligament pain. My husband begged me to get in the bath, so I did. That was the end of that. 7 years later, and I still take a bath any chance that I get. He loves them too, and we wish we had a tub big enough for both of us, hoping for a hot tub in the future. We are just about to renovate our main bath and are putting in a separate shower and tub so we can get a tub that's deep enough for me, boobs and knees, and long enough for him. Story 17. I would love to, but I'm 6'2" and cannot get comfortable in a normal-sized tub. My 5'tall wife takes 2 or 3 a week to relax, and I'm jealous. She has one of those bath trays with a book stand, a wine glass holder, and room for anything else she wants to toss on there. Sure looks nice. If we ever get around to buying a house, I'm putting a big-ass bathtub in. Story 18. Being 6 feet tall in a 4 to 5 feet tub is the opposite of enjoyable. Not to mention that they are super shallow. So even if your lower half is below water, it still feels like Buddy the Elf in the elf showers. I definitely see the appeal and would like to enjoy it, but I never fit comfortably. Story 19. I haven't had a bathtub in my adult life until June. I have been obsessed with bath soap, Epsom salt, oils, candles, the works. I put on a sheet masks and relax. It really does make a difference for me. I will make sure my bed sheets are clean and bed is made, and after the bath, just stay relaxed in bed. Story 20. As a fat person, no. I don't always fit well in most standard tubs, so the water pools really weirdly, so one part of my is soaking and the other is bone dry. Once in a while, if we get a huge soaker tub in a hotel, I'll treat myself, but as far as just getting clean, I'll take a shower every single time. Story 21. Sure, I just wish there was enough space for a longer one. Most of the standard ones you're likely to get/have the room to install in the UK are probably just long enough to recline somewhat against one end. But something you can submerge yourself in properly without sticking your legs out or tucking your knees in would be a delight. Story 22. No, because the house where I grew up had terrible water, and the hot water was unreliable as hell. So my choices were either take a shower and risk it alternating between boiling hot and freezing cold, or take a bath and have it be lukewarm or, more likely, frigid because someone in a different part of the house used the hot water for something, 4 families tapping into the same hot water supply. So bath showers became things of nightmares, and even now, whenever I look at the shower in our current home, I feel my body freezing and bones turning to ice. Story 23. To relax occasionally, yes. For bathing, no. Baths use a lot of water, and the water tends to get cold if you plan to sit there and rest for any length of time. Furthermore, if you're dirty, you just end up sitting in filth and have to rinse off with a shower spray anyway. If you have a hot tub, there's even more water, but it doesn't get replaced nearly as often, and it's disinfected with chlorine. Hot tubs can still eat a lot of power, though. Also, I'm 5'11" inches and on the larger side without being horribly overweight, so the average home bathtub is pretty small to me. Story 24. I'm approaching 50 and play cricket. think baseball, but in full Australian summer, and an innings goes for either 3 or 6 hours depending on the game mode. And you have to walk in and back 5 to 10 m for every delivery, and then swap to the opposite side of the park every 6 balls, 20,000 steps in an afternoon, no worries. And I'm about to finally move out of no bath for the past 5 years to a place with a bath, and I cannot wait. Some Epsom salts and a beer post-game will be so good. Story 25. Yes and no. While it's nice at first, I'm just too big for my tub. Either legs are almost completely out, or I'm only in up to barely half my chest, and even then a good chunk of my legs are out. I definitely think if I had a bigger tub, my opinion would be much more positive. Story 26. I am in the bath right now. I literally purchased the home I did because it had this amazing soaking tub. It is my haven, my respite. I'm here nearly every day for about an hour. When I showed my brother a picture of my new prize tub, he shot a look at me and said, "You'll never use it." I average 5 nights a week. I work a very physically demanding job. My body needs to soak often. It keeps me going. Sometimes I read books or surf Reddit or listen to music. It's my me time. Throw in a handful of dead sea salts with essential oils and I'm set. Story 27. There is a hotel in a lovely tourist town about 2 hours away from me. It is very nice but expensive. Their hotel rooms have bathtubs that are about 18 inches deep, 30 inches feet wide, and 6 feet long. I like to go to this hotel at least once a year just to take a mega bath. I get some expensive bath salts or bath bombs, some wine, and put on some chill music, or set up a laptop on a chair with a movie. It must last at least 2 hours. It is my favorite thing. Story 28. Baths over shower. Showers are convenient though. So relaxing, from drawing the water to draining the tub and putting my robe on after I use a robe after showers too. IDK, it's just the time I get alone to myself, but also the feeling of the water as I get in is uncomparable to a shower/hot tub in my opinion. I grew up with a pool and hot tub too. I swam competitively growing up. It's the comfort it gives me. Also, I was the kid that swam way too far out in the Atlantic Ocean for fun, lol. It's a totally controlled environment for me. I love water. So much I love having my man in there with me. He has come around to ask for his own baths since. However, you must have the right tub. Soaking tubs are where it's at, to each their own. I do enjoy them all, but top is bath. The only feeling I can compare it to is getting into a lake when you are by yourself. I know that's not what you're asking about though, but maybe that's why I like it.